Paweł hocamızla beraberiz tekrardan. Eğer sorularınız olursa chat kısmından bize iletebilirsiniz. Paweł hocam, we can start.
All right, so hello and good evening everyone. Herkese iyi akşamlar, and also I want to wish you iyi bayramlar. So tonight we will continue our JavaScript introduction to JavaScript lessons. And first of all, I want to, let's say, describe the plan that what we are going to do tonight. So the good news for the ones who, let's say, missed the last class is that I won't introduce very, let's say, new, let's say, ideas or, let's say, concepts in this lesson. Of course, there will be few, but in general, we will base tonight on the things that we did last week. So first of all, I will share my screen. All right. So I think that everything is all right. Yes, probably you can see my screen. So let's have a look once again, one by one, on what we did last week, let's say. Last week we started from the very general introduction to JavaScript. So let's have a look once again, let's say in 5 minutes, what we did. Quick. First of all, just a second. Okay, so first of all, how internet works and how website works. Also, we talked about HTML and CSS, about JavaScript itself, and types of programming. So let's have a look here. As you remember, once again, for the ones who missed our class, when we check some website, we always make requests to servers, then those servers process our requests and send back the bundle with files, actually with web page, and each web page generally consists of 3 files, and those are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And let's say the core file was HTML, so everything was kind of linked to that HTML file. Then we get the response to our computers and mobile devices. Once again, so HTML and CSS, those were just marked up languages. So those are not real programming languages, just let's say tools that give structure to our websites. And JavaScript was the only, let's say, real programming language out of those 3 technologies. And it was the language that was giving, let's say, the mechanisms to our code. Also, we had this comparison to English language. We can just skip this. We're using JavaScript in web browsers. So JavaScript was mainly created for, let's say, for front-end side, and front-end side is the thing that, let's say, the side that we can see. So everything is about the, let's say, user experience. So everything that you can see on the website, like clickable, let's say, buttons, images, text, everything what you can see that consists of HTML, CSS, and also JavaScript is front-end. So it's all about the user experience, and JavaScript was mainly created to be used inside of the web browsers. And in fact, for many, many years, it was the only programming language that could be used inside of the web browsers. However, since 2009, we can also use JavaScript on the backend, and backend was like a kitchen inside of the restaurant. So backend is about servers, about APIs and data. So like I said, for example, when you log into your social media account, we just get the information about your profile and other things. That you can use JavaScript in probably for almost anything these days. So first of all, of course, we use it for front-end sites, so for the websites, but also we can write server applications, native desktop applications, and even native mobile applications. For example, using React Native, we can create applications that can be run both on the Android and iOS platforms, let's say. So also we had a quick history of JavaScript. It started in 1995, so it's almost, let's say, 25 years old language. And yeah, and the biggest update that this language had was in 2015 called ES6, and that's why we sometimes refer to modern JavaScript as ES6 JavaScript, and everything what was before it's kind of the old previous JavaScript. However, JavaScript is backward compatible, so even if you use the old style JavaScript today, it will also work. So that was all about the theory. Move to syntax. So the second part of the lesson, we focused on the syntax, so how the language is structured. And first of all, we talked about variables, and then we moved on to functions and also DOM. So DOM was the document object model, and it was the place where, let's say, we connect JavaScript with HTML file. And then we finished with our game project. As you remember, this was our game project. So by this time, I just wonder, are there any questions about anything from the last lesson? Are there any concepts that you didn't understand exactly and you would like to, let's say, revise something, or do you have a kind of specific question? So I can wait 1 minute, please. Feel free right now to let's say, write down your questions and we will try to answer them.
Biraz bekleyelim o zaman gecikmeden dolayı. Sorusu olan varsa aşağıya yazabilir.
Okay, I think that's probably everything is clear. Let's move on to the next part. All right, so before we move on, we talked about the theory, and now let's also revise the syntax, the practical part, let's say, of coding JavaScript. So let me start from here, and here let me just things that we did last week. And let's revise it once again. Then we will look at the code of our game project, and then we will you remember there are 3 ways to declare variable in JavaScript. And first one was var, which say some name, say some string. So this was the first version, but this was the let's say way as we did before ES6, so before 2015. However, we can still use it, but I don't recommend you to use this, let's say, way of declaring variables. Also, another was const and let. So those are those modern ways of declaring variables in JavaScript. And in case of const, those are kind of, let's say, variables that are, like from English, you can guess const, like constant. Constant means something that is not changeable, let's say, something that won't change over time. So if you are sure that something will not change, for example, your name, we were using const. If it was changing, for example, something could change. If you think that something may change over time, then we used let. So those are the first core principal ideas about variables in JavaScript. So this is what you have to remember. Also, we focused on 3 types of, let's say, values. So we had also primitive and object values. So primitive values were just simple values that consisted of one type of value. So in these lessons, we just focus on 3 types. So numbers, including integers, so full numbers and also floating point numbers. And strings, so strings was basically text, and also booleans. Booleans is like true, false, so like 1, 0, something like on or off. So this is the whole logic of Boolean. Okay, so let's go back now. So as you can see, I introduced 3 types of, let's say, values. So those were the strings, and numbers were just numbers without any quote sign, let's say, and also Boolean. So Boolean was just true or false, but the difference is that those are not strings. This is not string. So that's why we don't use this double quotes or single quotes or whatever. So that's all. And also I introduced template literals, so this backticks. So this was another way to declare a string in JavaScript. And in this type, as you may remember, we can also include a JavaScript expression or even variable inside of the string. I don't know, Aybuke, if you want, you can give some extra explanation once again about this in Turkish, where you can use it if you wish.
Enter tuşunun yanında alt GR'ye basıp noktalı virgüle basarsanız backtick dediğimiz bu ters tırnak işaretini elde edebilirsiniz.
All right.
Okay.
So that's all, and then we move to the second type of, let's say, values in variables, and those were objects. And in JavaScript, basically, we have few types of objects like that. But in this course, we focus just on 2. And first one was object. So this was the object. So instead of, let's say, I will just make it, whoops. So instead of writing everything like that, like separately, we can put all of those values in compound one object as one value. So for example, as you can see, here we have, for example, Paweł Kowalewski. So it's like, let's say my profile, for example, and we have key values. So for example, we have name, value is Paweł, name, surname Kowalewski, like that, Boolean, different mixed type of values. Even as you may remember, we can also put even functions inside of the object. So for example, this function was calling console log. By the way, once again, console is this part that we can see. It's kind of like text display for JavaScript. So in most of the programming languages, we have this concept. So if you want to check up something, you can use console log. And we will be using console log quite a lot. Another type of variables was array. So the difference between array and object was that, first of all, objects were defined with this kind of curly brackets like that. However, arrays are defined with this kind of normal, let's say, regular brackets. And also, as you can see, the difference was that generally, actually, we don't have these keys in objects, in arrays. So as you may remember, maybe to access one, let's say key value from the object, we could use dot notation or let's say bracket notation. So for example, if we want to check, let's say console log and my name, so Paweł Kowalewski dot name. And here we can see Paweł. However, in array, we didn't have these keys. So in order to let's say check up, look some value inside of the arrays, we were using this bracket notation because every value in array has its index. So for example, let's say if you want to check up 5, so we should write console log, let's say numbers. And in this case, of course, we should write not, it should be, maybe we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, it won't be 5 because as you may guess, if we log at 5, then we will get 6 because in general in programming, we start counting from 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So that's why we should write 4, and then we will get 5. So this is how we were accessing arrays. And the last thing actually that we did last week about the syntax of JavaScript was this don't repeat yourself principle. So everything in programming, basically programming and computers should help us make, let's say, our processes, our, let's say, boring, let's say, things that repeated actions to make them reusable. And in programming, functions play this role. So for example, if you are doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you can use functions for that purpose. So this is how functions look like. I will also show you once again. So function look like that. We will declare it with a function keyword. Then there was a function name. Inside of this parenthesis, we had 2 parameters. Actually, any kind of, we could have some kind of parameters or just leave it empty. And the body of the function was in between those 2, let's say, curly brackets. And then we also have to call the function. So that's all about the, let's say, so far about JavaScript, about its syntax, what we did last week. And also we introduced the DOM, so document object model, and DOM was the place where we were, let's say, connecting JavaScript with HTML. So this is how we were able to create this game. So now let's do like that. Last time we didn't have much time, so I didn't have much time to explain how this game works, how some parts could have been, let's say, a bit difficult for you. So let me go like that. I will right now explain once again how this game works. So let's have a look what this game can do right now. Sorry, there is something I have to erase. So this game looks like that right now, as you can see. We have just this title here and question mark. So if you want to, you basically each time you click the button, some random number is, let's say, generated, and we have to guess is it this number or not. But also we have to input the number. For example, let's say 23. If we generate, let's say it's wrong, so we can try over and over again. And each time we click the button, new number is generated and displayed here. So right now, how this game works. Let's analyze it once again. Maybe some of you are familiar with HTML and CSS because we talk a lot about JavaScript, but we didn't cover those 2 concepts too much. Or maybe not, that's why I also want to explain it. So let's go right now step by step. So I hope that everyone can understand how this game works. And then once we are done with that, then I will, let's say, introduce some new additional concepts, and then we can improve our game. And that's how we will finish our lesson tonight. So let's have a look once again. So like you may remember, I will go up once again. Everything on websites, let's say every website was, let's say, was made up of HTML. So this was the structure of the website, and also, let's say, kind of the entry point. So this is the first thing that your computer or web browser reads when it gets some kind of website. Then to style it, we are using CSS and also JavaScript to give it some mechanisms. So if you think about this logic right now, so this is the first file that our computer gets when it loads the website. So let's have a look. How does it work? So first of all, we have this HTML tag here. So HTML tag declares a document. Let's say in JavaScript, we can call it a document that will be, let's say, made out of the HTML, let's say, language. And then basically we should put this kind of element, head. By the way, please pay attention that everything in HTML should start with this kind of tag. So these two tags like that, and inside there's some kind of name of the element. And everything should finish with this kind of backslash. So you again write the same tag, and that's how you should finish. So as you can see, everything here is nested inside of this HTML. Then we have head. Head is generally not visible for you. So in head, we load extra files. For example, in head, and also you can add title, for example, here, the title is JavaScript intro. You can see those titles. So here we could define title like that, for example, title, let's say, guess the number. This would work like that. We won't see here right now, but as you can see, we cannot see. But if we had the tab, we could see it here. And then we have the link. So it's kind of, we let's say add some files. So another file will be loaded, not JavaScript yet, but this is the style sheet, as you can see. So it's relative to what is relative to what? To style sheet. So style, and href means some kind of reference. Where is that file? This file is here. So we load this file with our style. Then we move to body. So everything what is in between the body, it is the, let's say, the content, that visible content of the website. And as you can see, first of all, we declared here this kind of element, div. We called it container because inside of this, I stored, let's say, some elements. And first element was h3. So h3, it's how big the letters will be. Let's change it for example, to 4, and you will see the difference. So also we have to change it to 4 here. And as you can see, it gets smaller. If you change it to h1, for example, it will be very big, yes, but I think that keeping it h3 will be probably the best way. So like that. You can also change it with CSS, by the way. And it starts from h1 to h6. P is a paragraph. So it's kind of different, for example, this like that, but you can have just even one character there or even nothing. And also we gave it ID. I will explain it very quickly. And then we have this button. So as you can see, this button is here. Maybe I will do it like that. So button. Also, each time we click this button, we call this on click. Like, for example, when I click on this button, we call some function. And the name of the button generate number. We can, for example, write like that. Check the number. Let's run it right now. As you can see, it changed right now. So if you want to change the text on this button, you can do it here. And then we have input, because as you can see, we can input something. That's why input. And also we gave it some parameters, some attributes. We called it attributes in, let's say, in HTML language. So you can give to this element some kind of extra options, let's say. We call them attributes, like I said. So for example, this will be type number. Look, what if I checked it, for example, text, but probably I will have to erase the other ones. So it will be text right now. So it means that it should accept just text. But here we have numbers because we want numbers. The minimum number will be 1, maximum 99. That's why here, as you can see, we can make it maximum 99. It should stop right now. Yes, let's make it, for example, 100. And now it will go up to 100. So that's basically all. Yes, as you can see, it's 100. Also, we had placeholder. So placeholder is something that is written here. And then we have this answer here. So this is something not visible because we don't have anything inside of here. And that's why we have something like that. And in the last part, this is very important. Please pay attention to this part because there is script. And as you can see, teacher, but we cannot see script. So what is script? So this is very important part of, let's say, JavaScript inside of the HTML. Because as I told you, everything starts from this file, from HTML file, not JavaScript file. Actually, it can happen on the backend, but right now we are talking about the website. So basically on the website, everything starts from HTML file. So first of all, we load the CSS file here for the style, but still we are inside of this. Everything will be like our starting point and ending points. So we will always come back to the same file. And here we also need to connect our JavaScript, let's say, code to this HTML so that a web browser can see what it has to load. So this is how we do it. We put it inside of the script. So basically, by convention, it's the best to do it just right before this last tag. So right before this body ending tag. For example, here we put it like script, and src means source. So where's that file? It's called index.js, and it's in the same folder. If, for example, it was in different folder, you can put it in different folder. Even you can link the file. So even you could use it from use the file from the internet here, or write your code in between those tags here. It's also possible, but this is the best convention. So this is how our HTML part looked like, and also CSS. So CSS is like giving the visual part. So as you can see, when I run it once again, look, for example, here we have background color. So we divide, let's make it to red, for example. As you can see, it's changed right now. So here, font size to REM. This kind of relative number. So it's, let's say, based the minimum, let's say, size of the normal standard size of the font on the website. Let's say doubled by 2, let's say, multiplied by 2. But you can use it pixels, for example, 10 pixels or 400 pixels, for example, which would be very big, 100 pixels, let's say. And yeah, but let's leave it to our end. Font family. So for example, monospace, you can change it to others. Let's say we have something Arial, for example. As you can see, it changed. But let's leave it to monospace. And color is about the text color. For example, if I want to change the text color to green, for example, it will be green right now, as you can see. So basically everything in the HTML file. So this tag. So everything what is in between this and it's visible on the website will get this, let's say, values about the style. However, maybe you will want to change some of them. So let's say other elements on the website. So that's how you can do it by, let's say, using some classes like that here, for example, and also IDs. I will not talk about the CSS today, but I hope it's quite understandable for most of you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Maybe we'll make extra course about this. Since it's JavaScript, I just wanted to let you know how this general, let's say, flow works. All right, and let's move to the last part of our, let's say, program of our game, and it was our index.js file. So once our website is loaded, it will also load this index.js file, and this is the code of our game. So first thing what we have here, look, we have constant variable. We gave it a name, random number element, and now we need to get some element, connect this element from HTML to JavaScript. So we have document. Document is like this HTML. This is the document. So we search in this document like that. Then we will look for one element with ID. And what is the ID? Random number. So here we find a random number, and this is this element here. And then also we have answer. So this is how it works. This is the document object model notation. As you can see, this is the same idea here, how it works. Then we look for answer. For example, answer is here. And then once we, let's say, assign those elements here to variables, we can change something with them, change something later. Then we have this generate number. So each time we click this, as long as those, let's say, rules are met, something is happening here inside of this function. So this function is called each time we click on this button. So for example, here we have this condition. We check if this user number, what is this user number? Look, Again, we take another element from document. So we check our HTML file, and we search for the element with this ID. This is other type of connecting the elements from DOM. This means ID. That's why this hashtag. So hashtag means ID. What is the ID? User number. As you can see, input has ID of user number. That's how we can connect to this element here. And that value, so we check this value inside of this element. So each time we write some value, we can see this value here. So, and then we check this value. If it's more than 0 and less than 99 or equal to 99, then this code will be run. Otherwise, it won't run. Otherwise, we will get else, as you can see, this alert. For example, let's say more than 200, and we get this message. So that's why we get, look, please input the number between 1 to 99. And this is how it works. So basically, are there any questions so far about this part? Is there anything that needs any extra explanation?
No, actually.
I hope not. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right, so let's move back to our coding, to the syntax part, let's say. So last time we talked about arrays, and arrays play very, very important part inside of, let's say, any programming language, let's say. So right now, I want to talk about the array methods. Actually, there are many, many methods in JavaScript that you can use on arrays, but since we store data inside of arrays, we will use these concepts quite a lot. So first of all, as you remember how we were creating, let's say, arrays. Let's create one, let's say numbers. If we don't have one, unfortunately, we have it here. So let's just copy it from here, or let's take it even from here. So this is how the array looks like. And now, what if you want to, let's say, add extra number to, or extra element to array? So first method we can do is called push. And what is push? It's like pushing something to the end here, to this part of array. For example, let's look like this, numbers. Maybe I will console log it here, console log numbers. Let's log. As you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what if we want to add extra number to this array? Let's say numbers, push, let's say 7. And as you can see, now we have 7. But what if, for example, we want to take this number back from here, if we want to cut this number? So then we can use another method, which is called pop. And as you can see in push, we have to put some parameter inside of this. We can also change it. We can use, for example, 7, for example, string. And as you can see, now we have string. So you can put any kind of, let's say, value here, and it will be pushed, added to the end of the array. But what if we want to cut the last element of array? Then we can use numbers that pop. And pops just pops out, let's say, takes the last element, like cuts. And as you can see, again, we have the same number. What if I call it, let's say, several times? As you can see, each time we call this method, the array gets smaller, smaller, and smaller. But what if you want to, let's say, take the first element? So we were using the last elements of the array, but what if you want to do the opposite? So in this case, we can use another method, which is called shift. Like that. Again, we don't need any, let's say, values here inside of. Let's write, for example, numbers shift. Call this function right now. As you can see, the 1 is missing. So we have just 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So by shifting, we just take the first number. If we call it again, let's call it several times. As you can see, now we are cutting the elements from the beginning of the array. And but what if you want to add a new value, but to the beginning of the array? In this case, we can use unshift. But with unshift, we will need some kind of value. So let's use it, for example, numbers unshift. Let's say 0. Let's say now it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's add 0 to the beginning. And as you can see, now we have 0. So those are the 4 core, let's say, methods that you can use on arrays. So push when you want to add the element to the end of the array, pop when you want to cut something from the array, shift when you want to take something from the front of the array, or unshift if you want to add something to the beginning of the array. So those are the 4, let's say, core methods that we use in JavaScript. There are also methods like slice and also and splice. However, those are a bit more complex techniques. I don't want to make you confused right now with those ones, but thanks to this one, you can put something inside of the array on the given index here. So in between, or at, let's say, here, any place where you want, or you can cut just part of it. However, I'm not going to cover this part today. So if you are interested, please feel free to check it out. All right, so those are the 4 methods that we use on arrays. And we will come back to this topic. But now I also want to let's say, introduce a new topic, kind of, let's say, because so far we were just, let's say, declaring new variables with values like that. But what if you want to declare the same value, let's say, assign the same value to different variable? What you can do? For example, let's try something like that. Const numbers 2, let's say, equal to numbers. How do you think what will happen right now? Let's write numbers, or let's say numbers here, numbers 2, and let's run the code. As you can see, numbers 2 is equal to numbers. Also, let's check are they the same. For example, you can use this double comparison sign. By the way, here there was some confusion. So one equal sign was assigning the values to the variables, but 2 or even 3 was comparing. Aybuka, can you also can I ask you again for explaining this part in Turkish to avoid extra confusions?
Tamam. Bir eşittir işaretiyle atama işlemi yapıyoruz. Yani bir şeye eşit olduğu zaman Türkçe'de atama dediğimiz işlemi yapıyoruz. Ama eğer 2 eşittir veya 3 eşittir olduğu zaman karşılaştırma olayını gerçekleştiriyoruz. Veya eşit mi diye sormuş gibi oluyoruz. Okay, we can continue.
Okay, thank you. So now if, for example, we compare these numbers to is it equal to, let's say, numbers, we will get true. However, look at this. I want to show you something, because now if you log just numbers, okay, they are the same, yes? But what if you, for example, added numbers 2.push, let's say 7, and if you log numbers 2, it's okay, everything okay. But what if we checked what is the value of numbers? And as you can see, when we modify this new array, we also modify the old one because they are connected to each other. So it is like modifying both of them, and it is not good practice. So what we can do instead, there are many ways to do that, but one of the easiest one actually is used in JavaScript ES6 version. It's called 3 dots, and it's called spread operator. So what you can do instead, you just think that you take the content of the old array, you create new array, and you copy paste, let's say, the content of the old array. So what you can do, for example, let's put it inside of the, that's like that, numbers 2 is equal to empty array, and then let's write 3 dots and numbers. And let's try now. As you can see, numbers is still just 6. However, numbers 2, let's check, 7. So in this case, we copied the, let's say, array, but now it's different. And unfortunately, the same thing happens with objects, and there the situation is even more complex. Okay, because now you may ask, teacher, why should we care about this? Why we can just maybe just rewrite it or something? Let's think that we have the object of person, for example, Paweł Kowalewski, yes? Let me just erase it from here and put it here. Okay, let me put it here. So as you can see, this is my object. And let's say right now that we have another student who is a Giriş University student, but we just want to change his, let's say, we don't want to rewrite this object from the beginning, and we want to use the same thing what I did with array. So let's say const John Smith is equal to Paweł Kowalewski. Let's check what happens. John Smith, let's log it. All right, great. Yes, we have the same object. It's okay. It's all right. We can just modify the values. Yes. So let's modify John Smith. That, let's say, name. We want to change name to John, and John Smith. That surname is equal to Smith. Great. If he is also a student, he's also a student at Giriş University, so everything the rest can stay. And then this object is modified right now. So as you can see, unfortunately, this technique is not very good. Why? Because we will modify the previous object. So what you can do in this situation, there are many ways to do this, but the easiest way to change it is to use let's say, technique called object assign. So in this case, we will use the same object from here, but you have to write like that, object dot assign. And now we will have this 2 parentheses here. Let's say, I hope it's visible. I will make the font size a bit bigger. Maybe like that. And first of all, we will put empty object. So this will be an empty object, dot comma. And after the comma, we will use Paweł Kowalewski. So what we do here is we create an empty object. We then take all of the contents from Paweł Kowalewski object, and we copy paste it inside of this new object. So now let's check what happens if Paweł Kowalewski is still the same. If we check John Smith, great, so it works. There are some, let's say, also cons, bad sides of this technique. However, if you have any questions, some further questions, please feel free to send me a message, private message, leave the comment or something like that. We can talk about it later. So, but at the beginning, I recommend you, so if you want to copy object and change it later, use object.assign. If you want to copy the array, use spread operator, so those 3 dots. And now you may also ask, what if we do the same thing with variables? Is it the same? No. Let's say the good news is that if we use it with primitive variables, so once again, primitive variables, with these ones, so with these ones, we actually don't have a problem. let's have a look. For example, let's say let's define a variable. Const. Let's say student1 is equal to let's say Adam, and let's say const is, let's say let in this case, because we'll change it. Student2 is equal to student1. Let's console log it. Student1. And as you can see, it's Adam. Let's console log student2. Also Adam. But what if we change right now student2 to, let's say, John? Okay, student2 is John. Student1, still Adam. So maybe it looks very simple for you. Maybe like, why do we even do this? But believe me, it is something very, very, very important in JavaScript. So before we move on to the further parts, you should really understand this concept. So please take notes. Also, if you are on this part, please take notes, write it down somewhere. It is very, very important part of JavaScript. All right, so this is about assigning the values in between the variables, etc. And now let's have a look at the different concept, which is called, let's say, for loops. So let's look at something like that. Let's say that, as you can see here, I had this, I will erase it. I did something like that, const numbers, yes? And, what if I want to, let's say, create such an array in automatic way? I don't want to just type it like, like numbers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Yes. So the thing what I can do, let's do something like that. Const numbers is equal to empty array. And if you have any kind of experience with programming, probably you're familiar with for loops. Loops is something that is run repeatedly. So like, let's say in several times it's repeating. So in JavaScript, we have this concept called for loops. Let's define it like that. Let I is, let's say, equal to 0, and I should be less than or equal to 10, and I should be increased every time, every loop. And now let's say numbers push I. Don't worry if it looks confusing right now. I will show you something in a minute. And let's check right now what happened. If we log console log the numbers, let's check what will happen. And as you can see, now we have array full of numbers, right? So what happened here? You may ask, how, when, how? First of all, for is like a function. It's kind of a function. It works like function. So we always define for loops with this keyword. Then we have to create some variable here. So in this case, we will say let I. We generally say I. You can change the name to anything you want. By the convention, we use I equal to, for example, 0. So we will run this loop. How many times we'll run this loop? It means actually. So we will start from 0, and this loop should run more or less. Let's say it should finish when this I is equal to 10. And each time we run this function, this loop, this I will be multiplied by 1. You could also write like that. I is equal to I plus 1. So it could also like that. So this means the same actually. And what does it mean? That each time this loop is run, this I is changing. And each time, 10 times, we are calling the same function, the same method on numbers array. So numbers push I, so numbers push 1, push 0, push 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that. So this is how we do that. So those are the loops. And what if you wanted, let's say, to use, let's say, loops for let's say checking something, the values of the array. We could do it like that. Look at this, for example. We logged in here. Now we don't see the values of the numbers, but we can also use a for loop in different way. For example, let's say value of numbers, and then we will console log a, let's say, value. Let's see what will happen. As you can see, we have 10 messages in our console, and each message contains each value of the array. So if you want to, let's say, check the values, let's say each value in the array, and sometimes you will want to modify, use them, take some parts, or check if there is something, you can use this kind of loop. Now you may ask, can we do the same with objects? Let me do something like that. I will just leave some space. So here we have the object, yes? What if I do something like that? For, let's say, let value of Paweł Kowalewski, and let's say console log value. Let's see. As you can see, this is wrong. It doesn't work like that with objects. However, you can do this in different way. So let's change it, for example, here to key. Let key of Paweł Kowalewski, and let's log it like that. Paweł Kowalewski. Let's say, let's log just key, first of all. Sorry, we also changed this off in. So if you are using for loop in objects, we use in keyword, okay? So remember about this. But if you use it for loop of arrays, we use off keyword. Okay, let's go back here. So what we console logged it right now, as you can see, now we can see this keys, yes? So we can check up what keys we have inside of this object. But probably we won't be very much interested in the keys rather than values. So how can we access the values in for loops in objects? We can do it by doing like that. So key, then bracket notation, and we will write here, let's, sorry, my mistake, Paweł Kowalewski. So we will log something in the object, but not the object, but the keys inside of it. So bracket notation key, let's run it, ta-dam, and whoops, sorry. And here we can see we have all of the values logged in. Maybe right now it doesn't make much sense for you, but you will see in time that it really works, and there are many usage of this, let's say, of this function. All right, so let's move on to our next, let's say, concept. All right, so that's all about the for loops so far. Let's use actually loop for something more before we move on to next concept. I think that we can have soon a break, but let's just finish this one and then we can have a break. Or I don't know. Aybuke, Yusuf, what do you say? Should we have a break right now or later? I don't know.
We can make a break right now. 5-minute break.
Okay, so let's have 5 minutes break, and after the break, I will show you how we can use it in practice.
Okay. Şimdi arkadaşlar 5 dakika bir ara vereceğiz. 5 dakika aradan sonra tekrar sizlerdeyiz.
Okay.
Evet, kaldığımız yerden devam ediyoruz arkadaşlar. Evet, Pavel hocam. We can continue.
All right, so hello and welcome after the break time. And last time, as you may remember, we talked about the two, let's say, core, let's say, ideas in fundamentals in JavaScript. So we had 4 loops. So how can we loop over something? How can we run, let's say, one function several times? Why do I say about it? Because if you ever apply for, let's say, job or something like that, there was some kind of algorithm. So this is the place where we come to, let's say, algorithms in JavaScript, and not just in JavaScript, but in any actually programming language. And if you ever heard about, let's say, something like FizzBuzz, so what is FizzBuzz? And we will try to solve the FizzBuzz algorithm right now. And FizzBuzz is a very, very simple program that is asked to write during the interviews, job interviews, let's say coding interviews. And this simple task has to determine is the potential, let's say, candidate for this role able to write code or not. So what is this? It is kind of, let's say, simple, let's say, program which should log, let's say, fizz if the number is, let's say, divisible by 3, divisible. And if it's divisible by 5, then it should show buzz. And if it's divisible by 3 and 5, then we should see message called fizz buzz. So now let's have a look how can we create such a program using our, just a second. I still see this. Taskbar, but okay, anyway. So how can we do this using loops in JavaScript? Let's, for example, first of all, let's create a for loop. And we will start this loop from number 1 in this case. We will run this loop until 100, and each time we will increase the loop. So what will we want to do? First, in this loop, you want to use some if statements. So let's say if I modulo 5 is equal to 0, and we will also have another condition here. So we would divide the condition. We add second condition. If I divided by, let's say, modulo 3 is equal to 0, then we want to run this code. By the way, once again, Aybuka, if you want, you can explain once again this terms. I mean, modulo and this triple signs in Turkish.
Tamam. Bu modula dediğimiz şey mod, kalan işlemini veriyor. Bir sayıyı bir sayıya böldüğümüzdeki kalan sayısını kontrol etmemize yarıyor. Kalan işte 0'a mı eşit yoksa 3'e mi? Kalan 0, 5 ile bölümünden kalan, i sayısının 5 ile bölümünden kalan 0'sa ve i sayısının 3 ile bölümünden kalan yine 0'sa diye devam ediyoruz burada.
Okay, so what will we want to do? If it's divisible by 5 and 3, then we want to console log, let's say, fizz buzz. Let's say else if, this is another, let's say, core principle in JavaScript, and we will add another, as you can see, again, we put some parentheses here. We will have different, let's say, condition here. So if this number here is divisible by 3, we want to console log, let's say, fizz. And else if I is divisible by 5, oh, sorry, I made mistake. It should be 0 here. we want to console log a bus. And else, if it's not divisible by 5, if it's not divided by 3, any of this, then we will want to see the number. Yes. So console log, let's say I. Let's run this program and see what happens. Oh, we had some wait, something happened very bad here. Okay, I forgot. This is also part of debugging. Now it works. All right. So as you can see here, we have 1, 2, fees, 4, bus, fees, and fees, bus, like that. So you can see in the console, but it's not very, let's say, it's very difficult, yes, to read it right now. So let's use our newly learned, let's say, method called push on arrays, and let's add those values to arrays. So let's create a new, let's say, array called fees bus array, or fees bus, let's say, empty array. And instead of console log, let's write fees bus push this again. Fees bus push also here. Actually, we can do it like that. If you hold Alt on your keyboard and if you click somewhere, generally in coding editors, you can copy your, let's say, cursor. So in this case, look, I will just use it once, and as you can see, I use in both places. Ibuke, if you want, you can make your comment here. Alt on the keyboard, by the way.
What should I explain?
Like I said, for example, if you have to rewrite the same code in the same places with the same, let's say, number, let me explain once again. For example, we have console log here, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get rid of this. So normally we can do like that, write fees bus, blah, blah, blah. But we can also do it in simpler way. So for example, if you just click here and then you hold out button and click here. And as you can see, now I can just erase the same thing in two places, as you can see. You can even put it in different places. And now I can just write fees bus.push. And as you can see, I wrote it in these two places at the same time.
Okay. Eğer ya ilk başta yazdığım şeyin sonuna tıklayıp alt tuşuna basarak aşağıya çekersek yukarıda yazdığımız şeyin aynısını aşağıya da yazmış oluyoruz.
Okay, thank you. And now let's check out if you run this. Of course, we won't see anything in the console. So let's check fees bus array. Console log fees bus. Let's run it. And as you can see, we have the array right now. Yes, so we have the fees bus, etc. And now let's also do one more thing. Actually, there is also a thing called switch. So we have if statements, if else, for loops, functions, but there's also a thing called switch. And what's a switch? Let me demonstrate to you how the switch works. So based on this example, we have fees bus. Let's count how many fees and how many bus and how many fees bus words do we have. So first of all, let's create three variables. Let's say let. By the way, we can define variables like that also, few variables. For example, let's say it will be let fees, let's bus, and let fees bus is equal to 0. Let's console log, let's say fees. Oops, fees bus. Okay, let's do it like that then. Okay, maybe let's do it like that, please. let bus, actually it should be deconstruction, but let's leave it like that for the time being. Let is bus where's this bus? Ah, sorry, my mistake. So it was okay. Actually, I made a mistake. Fees FB, let's say fees B. Ah. Okay, let's do it like that. 1 second. So let's fees. Why we have mistake? Because look, we declared the same variable with the same name here. So let's say fees 0. Let's bus 0, and let's fees B 0. Okay, now it should work. And now let's say like that. We will run the for loop once again. So let's say for let value of array, so value of fees bus. And now let's do like that. We will check all of the values in fees bus array, this array, and we will want to increase the numbers of these variables depending on the let's say how many words we have in this array. Let's check. Let's do like that. So we now can create something like that. Switch. Inside of the switch, we will use value, and we will have some cases. Let's say case. If the name is fees, we will want to fees add one number, break. I will explain in a second why it's like that. If it's bus, we will want to add one number to bus, break. If it's case fees bus, we will want to fees B plus plus break. That's all. It should work. Okay, and now let's check console log bus and fees B. Okay, as you can see, so we have 27 fees, so 27 words which are numbers which are divisible by 3, 14 that are divisible by 5, and just 6 that are divisible by both 3 and 5. How did we do that? First of all, we looped over the fees bus array here. So we checked all of the values. So this loop will already find the, let's say, immediately all of the numbers, let's say number of the values inside of this array. And then we will run switch. Each time we will run this switch function, let's say. And switch will use value. So this value, for example, inside of the fees bus, we will have like 1, 2, and fees, for example. So it will check. So it is 1. For example, if we check 1, is it fees? No. Is it bus? No. Is it fees bus? Okay, so then nothing. 2. And when it's free, for example, value is free, so value free will be fees. So it will check value free is fees? Yes. Fees, so what should I do? Fees, add 1, increment this number by 1, and then break. Why break? Because we don't have to check this other statement. So once you break the switch, the function is finished. We don't have to check the rest of them. But what if it was bus, for example? So check fees. No, it's not fees. Is it bus? Yes, it's bus. So then we move on to this part. But it was fees bus, of course, the last one. So that's why we use break keywords. Don't worry if it's still confusing for you. It's normal. It takes sometimes at least a few months or even years to really get these concepts, because the most important is using it in practice. Here is just showing you for the sake of, let's say, theory, letting you know that this something like this exists. You can always come back and check a look, or you can research about this, let's say, the methods here. All right, so we are almost finished with our syntax part here, but there's one more important thing in JavaScript that you have to know. It is very, very important also, and you cannot do most of the things in JavaScript if you don't use this. So what is this? It is called global scope. And local scope. Actually, we have also the versus local scope and versus block scope. So what is scope? If you don't know the scope word, please you can check it up, or maybe Ebuka, you can say the scope Turkish version. What is Turkish name for scope? So scope is some kind of perspective, what you can see, for example, scope, how many things you can see. And in JavaScript, this scope plays very important part. Let's have a look here.
Faaliyet alanı diyebiliriz.
Okay. Thank you. So what is scope? In JavaScript, we have generally three types of scope. It is global scope. And a global scope, it means that everything what is in outside, let's say on the top, let's say position of the code, so everything is visible everywhere in the code almost. We have also function scope, so something that is inside of the function. I don't know, is it, maybe I will make it bigger. So those variables will be visible just inside of the function scope. It is also called local scope very often, and block scope. So for example, here inside of the if. So as you can see, if it's like that. How does it work? Maybe we can have a look also here. So scope always looks up. For example, if we define some kind of variable and it cannot be found inside of the code, always the, let's say, browser or engine that is processing your JavaScript code will look up the code. What is up? Was this variable defined before? So let's have a look here. For example, we have function first. As you can see, we have this global variable here because it's outside of anything. So it's like outside of the box and it's visible almost everywhere. But here, not here. So if you define it under it, it's also not visible because it's about the, let's say, this, like I told you, always the code is read from the top to the bottom. However, scope is always looking up. So for example, there's a function, and look, for example, you have this constant, h is 30, and then we check, so this is a block scope here, and here we have also function scope. So for example, this function, so this is a function and the block scope. So, and as you can see, if we have two block scopes and they are in different separate blocks, like here, for example, this one here, they cannot see each other. Maybe it doesn't make much sense right now, but let's have a look in practice. Let's have a look at something like that. For example, let's say for, again, why not? 0, it will go, let's say, up to 10, plus, let's say, and let's say console log I. So we can see it, yes, it's quite okay. But what if we did something like that? Look, we define this console log outside of the scope. Now we have the reference error, yes, because let here is block scoped here, because this is the block. Look, this is like a block, this part here. That's why we cannot reach this value. So what about the, let's say like that. Let's create a function. And let's say, I don't know, add two numbers. And let's say something like that. Let's say return inside of the function, let's make something like that. Let's say num1 is equal to 1. Let's num2 is equal to 2. And we will return num1 plus num2. Okay, if we run it now, it's okay. But what if we want console log add two numbers? So let's see what will happen. Num2, number1, add two numbers. Okay. Let's say like that. For example, add two numbers, 1, 2. Let's say let the result go to this result. That's strange. Okay. Okay, this is my mistake. Okay, 3. So as you can see, here we have 3, right? Where's console? Okay, here. So for example, we have 3, okay? 3. I hope this is very clear right now. But what if we did something like that? Let's say that here, as you can see, I declared numbers. What if I want to console log here num1? And as you can see now, I cannot reach this number because it's function scope. So this variable is inside of the function. It is not reachable, let's say, from here. You cannot reach it. But what if I moved this number from here to here, let's say? Let's see what will happen. And now I can log it, yes? And let's see, will our function work? Yes, it still works, yes. So because now this let num is in the global scope, so it's outside, so also our number can reach this variable here and see it outside of the code. Okay, so this is the global scope and local scope and block scope differences. I'm not sure it's very confusing for you, but you have to pay attention to it. All right, so that would be all about the theory so far. And I think that we can move on and improve our, let's say, a game from last week based on using all of the techniques that that we used, let's say, in this class. So having into the, let's have a very short, let's say, a revision of what we done today. So today we learned those 4 methods, array methods of push, pop, shift, and unshift if we want to add something or take something from the array. We also learned that we can copy the objects like arrays and objects, but we have to use object assign or the spread operator for copying the arrays. And for loops. This is one of the most important, let's say, takeaway from this lesson. So for loops, if you want to iterate over some arrays and take some values from this array. Okay, so now let's, enough of theory. Let's have a look at project and let's improve our game a bit. So our game looked like that last week. All right, so this was our game. And now let me do something like that. Of course, I had it before written, but let's check how can we change our game a bit using all of those things that we've learned so far today. Okay, so let's do something like that. So, for example, here. Let me do something like that. So here we have this game, okay? So this is the check number. We have the number. It works like that, but the game doesn't make much sense right now at this moment. And what we can do here about this is that we can actually add some new features using the things that we've learned so far. So first of all, first thing we can do in this game is to add some, let's say, new let's say features. Aha, by the way, I forgot about one more important thing that I wanted to introduce today. Before we move on to game, sorry for that, I completely forgot. What if we say, let's say that you want to run some code, but not at the moment when you click the button, when you run the code, after some time, delayed. Let's look at this, for example. Let's say that you want to console log hello world, but after 2 seconds. Now, as you can see, when I click it, it's run immediately, yes? So what we can do in JavaScript, we can set something like set interval, let's say set timeout, sorry, timeout, and here we can define a function inside of it. And in this function, we will call console log hello world. And here, as you can see, after this declaration of the function, we will call it after 1000, let's say. 1000 is 1000 milliseconds. Let's run it. As you can see, 1 second later, we get hello world. Let's change it to 2 seconds. And as you can see, 2 seconds. There's also a second way we can use interval. Let's say something like that. Let number is 0 for, let's say, in seconds. Let's say seconds is 0. And let's increase this by, let's say every second we want to increase by 1. By the way, I will use ES6 function declaration here. So this arrow functions like I explained last week. So console, let's say first we will want to console log the seconds here. And after that, we will want to increase seconds by 1. And how many we want to do this? Every 1000 milliseconds. Let's check what will happen. Let's run it. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and it goes like that. Yes, so we have counter right now. As you can see, it logs every second like that. But how can we stop it right now? So there are 2 ways to do that. Let's run our code like that. No, it won't work. So let's do it like that. For example, let's put if statement, if seconds is equal to, let's say, 10, we will clear the interval, and we have to give the name of the interval. However, this interval doesn't have any name right now, so let's give it some name. Let's say, for example, set interval. Now it's equal to this is the name of this interval, and let's call it interval. Let's try right now. Okay, now it should count just to 10. Let's check. Okay, now it's 10 because we didn't log the 10. Okay, but as you can see, it's closed. We can also do it in different way. The second way to do this, we can set the timeout here. And with timeout, we will do this like that. We will call this clear interval. Clear interval. Interval here. When after, let's say, 5 seconds, for example. Let's check it out. As you can see, now we have just 3. So what does it mean? That this interval is run every 1 second. We repeat the same function again. And after 5 seconds, we clear this, let's say this interval, we stop it, we just erase this function. However, it is not a very good way to do this because sometimes it's not very, let's say, detailed, and sometimes the results may differ. So you may never be sure about the result. The results may change. Okay, so let's go back to our game example right now, and how can we use it inside of our game? So first of all, let's go to the HTML file here, and let's use something like that. By the way, please let me just use the ready code, because otherwise it will take a lot of time. So let's do it like that. For example, this. So here, as you can see, I have this time. If we run this, we have this time here, yes? So we will have time. But it doesn't work right now. Even if I click something, it still doesn't work. So what we can do on this place? Let's also add some, let's say, start button. I have it prepared here, so I'll just use it from here. Let's add one more button, start button. And as you can see, now we have start button, right? And we call this generate number here, sorry, start game here, but we don't have this function start game in our code. So we will have to add this function here in our JavaScript part. However, we may not want to use this to, let's say, show this to elements here. So we will want to hide them. And how can we do that? So there are a few ways to do that. Let's do like that. Let's, by default, let's add some style to those buttons. Let's check, for example, style is equal to display dot none. As you can see now, it's not visible. Let's do the same for the input. And as you can see now, we have just start. Yes, so now start is, but it doesn't do anything right now, so it's kind of useless right now. Okay, so let's have a look at our, let's say, a JavaScript file right now. So in our JavaScript file, we have to get those numbers. There are quite a lot, so let me just copy them right now. So we will have generate number. I will just use them from here. Okay. So what do we have here? Firstly, we get this element. So firstly, we had this number element from here. And also we have this answer element. So this answer that was shown before, now it's not, of course, but maybe you remember this. For example, we had congratulations, correct or wrong number, and the generate button. So what else can we do? We have also user input. We already had it. Now we have the start button, and also we have the timer right now. So what is timer? Here, as you can see, we have this time. Here we will display this time using the interval later on. And also we have a message. I will add also a message part here. Let me add it just a second. Let's do it like that. Message. Let's put it somewhere here. And let's move answer from here so it will be more visible. Okay, now we have the time. This quite okay. All right, so this is how it looks like. So now let's start from function start game. Okay, so this will be the first function that we will call. And in this function, we will want a lot of things to happen. So first of all, let's say when we click this function, nothing is happening right now, but we will want to show this missing two numbers. How can we do this? The missing two buttons. For example, we can do this like that. For example, generate button here, remove attributes, and style. If you run it, oh, generate button, remove attribute. Let me check. Where is it? I didn't generate button. Generate button. Okay, so now it works. As you can see, when we click the start, we see check number. But we don't want the start anymore. So we also want to hide the start. And we also will want to show this user input. So let's say user input. Actually, we can just copy paste it. But instead of this one, we will use just user input. Okay. Now, as you can see, when you click start, we can see these two buttons. But we'll also want to hide the start button. So we will use just start button style display is equal to none. Okay, let's try this one out. Okay, so as you can see, when you click start, we can see the game. Quite okay. We have the first functionality of the of our game, let's say. And now let's move on to the next part. So now we want to, let's say, start some times, counting some time, let's say, showing this time here. So we will want to define a let's say timer. Let's say that timer is equal to 0, or let's say 60. And what if we do like that? For example, this time, where is it? Timer. Timer inner text is equal to timer. Let's look what will happen. Timer. Timer. Sorry, time. Timer, time, okay. Inner text. Cannot give what's the problem here. Timer inner text. Okay, we have some problem here. Timer 16 timer. Okay, sorry. Time, let's say time. And then we'll put timer. Okay, now we can see time is 60, right? So you can see the spelling is very important. We shouldn't name two variables with the same names. So we have this time 60 right now, but this time is not changing. Yes, it's kind of useless right now. When we run it each time, okay, we have the time, but it doesn't change anything. So at this point, we will want to start an interval. So let's create something like that. Wait, const time interval equal to set interval. And inside of this, we will want to run a function, of course. And in this function, we will want to do something, of course. So what we will want to do, first of all, we will want to set time minus minus, because we will, let's say, take number from just one, like -1 from time. And we will want to use timer inner text is equal to time. Let's check it out. Of course. Sorry. So we should put the number. Let's say 1000. So everyone 1 second. And as you can see, now we have the timer. But it will never stop. Actually, it will go minus something. It will start counting minus at some point. So we have to add some functionality to stop it. Actually, I see that it will take a lot of time. So let me just use my code from before I prepared this, let's say, lesson. So let's just divide it like that. And now we can run it once again. Okay, so now timer will go up, but let me just do it like that right now. So what do we do here? As you can see, each time we take -1 from the timer, and every second we set new time to the timer here element. And also I put this condition here. If the time is less than 10, it will change to red. Let's have a look. By the way, before we move to this timer, let's have a look. If time is 0, then we will also use the highest score, but I don't want this code for the time being. I will show it to it. As you can see, it's red now. And as you can see, it will stop at 0. Now highest is undefined. That's why we have an error. Don't worry about this. And why stop? Because we are inside of this block. And inside of this block, we have clear time interval, but it should stop right now. Okay, totally horrible. Okay, so let's have a look. Actually, I think that's okay. Now it's counting back again. Why? Because timer interval is the same. Let's run it once again. Let's check like that. If timer is equal to, let's say, 50, let's run it once again. Whoops. Let's check what will happen. We should clear the interval. Okay. We have the error. Okay, that's why we had this problem here. Let me check this out. That's once again 55 maybe. Wow, that's interesting. Why does it work? Okay, apparently there was some problem. Okay, so let me just we don't have time. I see we have just 15 minutes, and I really want to finish the code. So let me show you my ready, let's say, project that I created on Screenbot today before the class. And it was here as far as I remember. Yeah, this was this one. Okay, so this is the ready project here we have. Sorry for not explaining it right that like one by one, but we don't have time. So this is how the game looks overall after all of the, let's say, modifications here. So what we can add using the interval, as you can see here, for example, when we start the game, we have the timer, and timer goes like that. So here, when we guess the number here, we will also get this kind of message. So the number is higher, let's say 70, now it's lower, 60, it's higher, 67, let's say, still higher, 69, lower, 68, correct. So when we get the correct number, then everything is starting again. And when the timer is 0, the game will completely stop from running. All right. So let's try once again. The number is higher, let's say 89, for example, lower, 88, let's say 70, it's higher, 78, still higher, 82. Okay, and as you can see, the game is over. So we have the timer is 0, it stops at 0, the highest score is 1, and when we click on the game, everything goes once again. So let me explain just how it works. So this is the same gate that we used in the first lesson last week. However, there are some differences. A few options were added. So first of all, when we run the game, we see just the start button here, as you can see. And the start button calls this start game function here. So first of all, we call this function, and this function declares new values to the global scope variables. So here it is score and time. So each time we run new game, we, let's say, reset those values. So to 60 and 0. And then we hide the start button and we show the input and generate button. Actually, it's this checked button right now. So when you click, you can see this two appears. But we don't want it right now. That's why I will not show. Then also we start showing the time. So we show the time. For example, here you cannot see the time. Look, when I click, it's 60. And then it starts going down and down. And we also put the empty message. I will go to this. And then we set the interval. So our interval takes one number from this time here, from this variable. So it's like -1, -1, -1, -1 every second. And also every second we render new number to this HTML element. And there is condition. If the time is lower than 10, then we change the color to red, like I told you. For example, it changes to 55 to show you how it works. For example, now if we run it. As you can see now, it's red. But let's leave it back to 10. All right. And also we have another condition. So it's 0. Then we set the high score. We compare. If the highest score is lower than your score, current score, it will update the highest score and we will show the highest score here. So now it's 0, but if you make the better score, of course, will be more. And here we have also a lot of things are going on. So first of all, we have this message element here, a message, as you can see here. Now it's empty because we don't want to show any message. Let's say that I will decrease the time to, let's say, I don't know, 10 seconds, just to show you what will happen. Let's say, whoops, 32, numbers higher. Of course, I wasn't able. So this is this message, game over. Game over, your score is, and we will want this score to change, yes? So that's why we have, let me change it back to 60 seconds. We will put this inside of this message element. We will put this string with this name, game over, your score is, and he will use the template literals that we learned from last week, maybe you remember. So score, and the score is here, defined in the global scope. Another thing what we will want to do, so we will want to hide this generate, but so check button and also input once again. And again, we will want to show the start button, but look, what is going on here? Because we already started the game, then we don't want this button to be called start anymore. We have to run it once again. We want to call it restart. That's why I changed it to restart. And also we can change the style. So for example, it's red, then we have the color white, text, then answer. We erase the answer like this correct no, because we don't need it. And number, we also don't show because we don't want to show it. And then we clear the interval because we don't want this function to run anymore. So this is our start game function. And this is run only when we click this check button number. That's why we don't have to call it from here. We call it every time when this this button is visible. But let me run it once again. Not many things actually changed here, despite the fact that here, as you can see, I added this code. So we check firstly right now if you guessed the correct number. Of course, again, we have the correct number. Also, another important thing, it may be interesting for you, that in JavaScript, you can use emojis inside of the string. So you can put, for example, happy face. We change also the color, and we set the timeout. So we just want to show it for 50 milliseconds. And as you can see, score is increased by 1. However, if the number is bigger than the random number, we will want to show this a wrong number is lower and change the style. If the number is smaller, then we want to show different message. As long as you, let's say, don't find the correct number. And one more thing is that, as you remember before in the old game, here in, where was it? Let's just clear it to the old version. No, we still don't have this. Okay. This was our previous version. When we clicked this, each time I clicked, the number was changed. Yes, always we were generating new number. However, right now we don't want this. We want to generate only when you guess the correct number. That's why, as you can see here, I call generate random number. And what is generate random number? I delegated this function to the new function. It is declared here, and this function will only change the number element here in the global scope. Now it's 0, but it will generate this random number. We will multiply it by 100 plus 1, because as you remember, math random generates number from 0 inclusive to 1 exclusive. That's why we add 1, because we don't want 0. And then math floor, because we don't want this, let's say, float numbers. So we will call this function only when the user guessed the correct number. Otherwise not, and also in the first place, if number is 0, so if you start game, then you will also let's say generate the random number. So this is how the game looks like. If you want to reach the game, you can find it on my GitHub. It will be, I will update this code right after the class. You can download the code, you can modify it, you can play with it. As you can see, I didn't even write, and we have just last 5 minutes left. So sorry for not coding it live, but I just realized we would completely run out of time. So that's all I think for today. So thank you for listening. That's all, I guess.
Thank you so much for your effort. Arkadaşlar, katıldığınız için çok teşekkür ederiz. Eğer sorularınız olursa Paweł Hoca'ya da iletebilirsiniz. Discord kanalımız var. Instagram kanalımız var. Bize ulaşabilirsiniz. Herkese şimdiden iyi akşamlar diliyorum.
Yes, by the way, one more thing I wanted to add also. Just, don't worry if this kind of things looks confusing for you. We wanted to do our best to explain JavaScript in very short time, but explaining JavaScript in 2 or 4 hours is quite impossible, actually. So even though those are kind of easy and simple things, it really needs a lot of practice. So what I strongly, let's say, encourage you to do, to practice, and write your own applications, write your own code, try new things, research on the internet, and don't give up. It may take approximately, it takes minimum 1 year. So even if how long does it takes to learn JavaScript, you will see 6 to 9 months minimum, and even it's less than that. So, I mean, they showed the less. So normally it's at least 1 year. So don't worry if there is something confusing. Like Ibuka said, if you have any questions, please feel free to write, and please practice, and write your own applications. So that's all. Thank you for listening, and wish you have a good night.
Dinlediğiniz için çok teşekkürler arkadaşlar. Just Code It eğitimlerini yapmamızın amacı aslında biraz da izleyenleri motive etmekti bu konularda. Pazar günü Batuhan Hoca'nın Python'a giriş eğitimiyle devam edeceğiz. Dinlediğiniz için çok teşekkürler. İyi akşamlar diliyoruz. Görüşmek üzere.